From the campus of the University of Nebraska at Omaha, Consider This with Kathy Wyatt, a program of issues and information behind today's news.
We are going to do the best job. We're going to turn it around. It's got to be turned around. It's got to be turned around fast. And we're going to turn it around. We're going to do it in every way, with so many ways, but we're going to do it in every way. We're going to be paying down debt. We're going to be reducing taxes. We can do things that nobody else can do. Nobody else is going to be able to do it.
Hi everyone, I'm Kathy Wyatt. Welcome to the 28th season and this week's edition of Consider This. Our topic, the economic outlook for 2025. Joining us to talk more about it is Ernie Goss, McAllister Chair and Professor of Economics at Creighton University. Thank you so much for being here and welcome back.
Well, good to be here, Kathy. Thanks for the invitation.
You bet. I want to start by just having you paint a picture of the current economy.
The current economy is reasonably good. How's that? In other words, jobs, we're creating jobs, but not enough. There are a lot of part-time jobs, not enough full-time jobs. The economy is expanding, but not at a pace that we're comfortable with. The 85%, I'll call it perhaps 80%, are not doing well. The 20% are doing quite well. So it's a bifurcated economy in that regard. And finally, I think the big elephant in the room is, and no one talks about it, is the deficit and the debt. Mm-hmm. And you remember the campaign we just listened to for shortly. Thank goodness it was shortened a bit, but neither Harris nor Trump talked about the debt and deficit. Why not? Because no one wants to talk about it, because no one wants to do anything about it. So I'm usually talking about it, but then I don't have any power to do anything about it. So I'm impotent in that regard.
When it comes to all of that, and we look back on the Biden administration, where can it take credit? And Ernie, where would you say it would be somewhat realistic to place blame?
Well, I'll take the latter first, blame. Both Trump and Biden increased the size of the federal government substantially. The spending now is between $6 and $7 trillion, and the deficit is approaching $2 trillion. And that was started out with the Trump stimulus plan, then the Biden stimulus plan, then the Biden IRA, Inflation Reduction Act. It was called the Inflation and Deficit Reduction Act. They were smart enough to take out the word deficit because it didn't reduce the deficit. They didn't catch on. It didn't reduce inflation either, so they should have taken out the word inflation because that was not good. And then the infrastructure bill. You're talking about, again, I'm placing blame principally on President Biden. Now it was Trump as well, but Trump just ignited the engine, and President Biden put his foot on the accelerator, and he has indeed done that. And now we have almost a train out of control because of that expansion. And how you pull it back now, how do you really do that? Now, in terms of the good things that the Biden administration did, they of course they expanded renewable energy. Now that's a good thing, but then some of the missteps, in that regard, they bailed out some of these companies that should not have been bailed out, and they supported some EVs, for example, that Americans just not taking to that. Stellantis this week, used to be Chrysler, they're having real difficulties, and it's likewise GM and Ford because no one's buying the EVs. So the Americans are a little tired of being told what they should buy and shouldn't buy, and that's another issue. So, but all in all, I would regard the Biden administration as an okay job. The expansion was reasonably good. It should have been better, though.
Okay. Tuesday, November 5th, of course, Americans weighed in and elected Trump for a second term. You, I'm sure, were watching, just like the rest of us. What was your initial reaction to the results?
That I couldn't believe it, first off. I mean, I didn't expect that overwhelming. It wasn't a blowout, but it was certainly much heavier in President Trump's favor than I expected. And Americans, and I'm sorry to say this, but bad politics just roots out good economics. And I would say we had so much bad politics between Harris and Trump talking about things that just are not doable. And they will not be done. They cannot be done, but they're very alluring for voters. I mean, I got to vote for that. Yeah, vote for more money. Give me more money. Give me. But no one's talking about paying the price, and that needs to be all across the board. The idea that Social Security should not be cut, hands off Social Security, that is not reasonable. We all have to, from an infant who's 1 year of age to a 94-year-old rich person in Nebraska, we all have to pay. We need, and we're not. We're all trying to avoid paying, and so, right now we're on the precipice of some interesting issues coming forth.
Well, great segue into this next question, because on the trail, Trump threw out several proposals, and today I really want to talk about 4 of them: tariffs, inflation, immigration, and taxes. So I want to begin with tariffs. What are they, and how do they work?
Well, of course, it's in this case we're talking about placing a tax on imports from other nations, principally, and we're talking about principally Japan, China, Canada, and Mexico. Those are the 4 that we really focused on, and it's a tax that is borne by both the producer and the seller and the consumer in the U.S., depending on what we call the elasticity. What's the responsiveness? For products where individuals are very responsive to price changes, then that is going to be borne by the seller. If they're not very responsive, back in OPEC, back in the 70s, we couldn't respond. We had to continue to buy that OPEC oil. Then it's borne by the consumer. So the idea that, well, it's all going to be paid by the consumer is wrong. Depends on the product, depends on the nation. So that's what, and if you really, Kathy, if you really want to go in, reduce the trade deficit, go into recession. That what happens, and you don't want that, of course, that reduces imports. And more than it reduces exports. So it's the wrong target, is to say, in my judgment, is this trade deficit. Now, I think it is a good thing that the president's identified, say, cheating on other parts of the other nations. If they are, in fact, not dealing with us fairly, something needs to be done. I'm afraid he may go overboard on that. Well,
I want to address that too. So Trump claimed that tariffs would generate revenue from exporting countries. Harris described tariffs as really a sales tax. What is the practical effect?
It's a little of both. It's a little of both. But back in it's a mercantilist view, the idea that somehow you can increase your exports and reduce your imports, and that creates value to the nation. Well, do you really want to produce hothouse Nebraska bananas? No, of course not. You produce corn, soybean, and you trade it for Guatemalan, effectively. Guatemalan bananas are Montana Merlot. I mean, come on. We have the various nations. We in Nebraska, we have a very big comparative advantage in terms of agriculture and in some cases manufacturing. So let's take advantage of our comparative advantage. We want to be selling corn to Mexico. We don't want that I don't want it. I don't want to see farmers have it cut off. I mean, Mexico, the president of Mexico is no capitalist. Let's just put it that way.
Well, let's talk about the threats of tariffs to Canada and Mexico and the trade agreement that was negotiated in 4 years ago.
Right.
What kind of effect will this have on that?
Well, effectively, it's undermining it, and you're tossing it out in certain cases. In other words, we're talking about abandoning some of our promises, in a sense. But now that's not just us. I mean, the president-elect is correct in some ways on that, and so I salute him for taking. But Kathy, we don't know what's going on in that person's mind, that being President Trump. If I did, it wouldn't be effective. In other words, he's a negotiator, Ernie Goss is not. So if he's going to be effective, it has to be in terms of, you don't want retaliation. In other words, push it to the line, get them to give in, they give in, we're fine. If they don't give in, we're both in trouble. That's the nation we're threatening, whether it's China, Mexico, Canada, or Japan. We're in deep trouble. I mean, deep trouble, that's an overstatement, but Smoot-Hawley was passed in 1930-31, and that ushered in the Great Depression of the 1930s, and we don't want that again. I mean, tariffs, they can be effective, but if they're just out there across the board, they can be very damaging. And that's a concern I have. Most economists, you find me one economist who's on board with, raise tariffs, that it brings in revenue. That's mercantilist thinking back in the 19th century. That's not our thinking today. But again, as I said, bad politics will root out and overwhelm good economics every day of the week. So we sit on the sideline, we economists, and laugh about it. It's no laughing matter, because they win, we lose on that one. But I think the president he's a smart man. He knows what he's doing. But on this one, I hope you can sometimes go too far. We've all negotiated those, and oh wait, I didn't mean that. Yes, you did. I mean, just today, China said, we're going to cut off some of those commodities to the U.S. The export. Now, come on, that's no response. But another issue, Kathy, is China can overwhelm any of these tariffs by reducing the value of the yuan. In other words, you slap on a 50% tariff, well, we'll reduce the value of the yuan, we'll offset it. And by the way, what do the Chinese do with the dollars they get from me buying toys or me buying electronics from China? Well, we send the dollars over there. What do? They just sit on them? No, they send them back and buy our bonds. They lend to us, and that reduces our interest rates. Now, they have pulled back on that already, so President Trump might be reacting to that. So the Chinese they're an authoritarian nation. He doesn't have to get approval from the people.
Okay. All right. I want to go on to inflation. We could talk about tariffs all day, but let's talk about inflation. That's number 2. It spiked early in the Biden administration, but it's come down recently, right?
Well, it has, dramatically.
And what do you make of that? I mean, what direction? Talk about where we're going from here.
Well, you notice the Fed is now reducing interest rates. They began reducing interest rates on September the 18th. They reduced it again in November. They're probably going to reduce it again in December the 18th. Why are they doing that? Because they see a slowing economy, but also the government, our federal government, has interest expenses that are just overwhelming. Okay, so the Fed's pulling down those interest rates. One of the reasons is so the U.S. Treasury will not go broke paying interest payments. But on that, if you notice, on the 18th of September, when they reduced short-term interest rates, what happened to long-term rates? They went up. They went up. Mortgage rates went up. Now, what is that telling us? It's telling us that investors globally say the Fed doesn't know what they're doing. The Fed thinks there's no inflationary pressures, so they can reduce rates. Investors are saying, yes, there is inflationary pressures. So what is it telling me? In the second half of 2025, it tells me inflation is going to rear its ugly head again. Again, it's like a campfire that you thought you put out. It didn't go out.
Okay. Harris addressed price gouging to lower inflation. So remind us, what is Donald Trump's plan?
In terms of inflation, I'm not certain what his plan is. He's going to rely on the Federal Reserve to reduce interest rates. And in terms of inflation, he's also turning to our two DOGE, to reduce the bureaucracy in the federal government. Now, we've had a lot of presidents have died on that one, and it just generally doesn't happen. I was with the Congressional Budget Office back in a few years ago. It's very hard to reduce the size of the federal government. It just grows and grows and grows, and now you step it up, it ratchets up, and that's what we've seen. And Elon Musk and Vivek, I don't see it happening. That's his plan. I don't think it will happen. I mean, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I think the president, the president-elect is a wise man. He'll see it and do an in-course change.
Okay, on to our third, immigration and his plans of mass deportation, right? Is that even possible? And if so, what kind of an impact would that have on the economy?
As long as you deport, the deportation is for illegal immigrants who are not working, good. That's certainly a positive. But if you're talking about taking those men and women that are here working, and that's, you talk about Nebraska. When I've been here, my family and I've been here a number of years. The first thing you get when you come from the East Coast, you come here and you're like, wow, it's brain drain, brain drain, brain drain, brain drain. Because Nebraska's always, generally speaking, losing individuals, workers to other states. Well, some of those immigrants will be gone, and some of them. Now, again, I hope we don't deport some of these individuals that are working. Take the meat packing plants. That some of those individuals, I would argue, or probably don't have they don't have a green card, or they're not citizens in many cases. Now, I can't back that up. I don't know.
Right.
But that's one of the issues. I mean, we need workers. Our birth rate in the U.S. is abysmally low. We're at the low rates of birth, and we need men and women to work. So we need legal immigration. We need legal immigration. So the Biden administration is not very good there. The Trump administration has not been good. We need men and women that want to come here and work, whether professionally, whether you're working on the crops, picking tomatoes in Florida. We need those individuals. I mean, so again, it would be a problem for certain states particularly, and it would not be a problem if you deport illegals, those who have arrest records and so on and not working, because a lot of individuals have come here and we give them $400 a week benefits. Well, that's a drain on the taxpayer right there, and that obviously is not good.
Okay, Medicaid, talk of Medicaid cuts and work requirements. We have low unemployment. I mean, how does all of that, when you hear about the cuts and you hear about these requirements, what is it that we're supposed to be thinking about, Ernie? I mean, is that even realistic, and how would that play out?
It is realistic. Back in the Clinton administration, we had work requirements to get AFDC, it was called at that time. That worked wonderfully. I call it wonderfully. So those who had to get out and go to work, they didn't see it as wonderful. But the work requirements should be there. In other words, we've got a vast, I don't know what you call it, a number of individuals and families that aren't working because the federal government and state governments have incentivized them to stay at home. So back to the Biden administration, if you look at the jobs that were added for 2024, there were full-time jobs were lost, not gained. A lot of it can be traced to, in my judgment, excess payments for not working, incentivizing non-work. We do it quite well in the U.S., and we do it better in certain states than other states. Okay,
all right. And let's see, fourthly, taxes. Trump's tax cuts in 2017 increased the budget deficit. You talked about this early on. Some of those are due to expire next year. What's going to happen? And you touched on it, but is he really going to address this issue?
I think he will, but here's the another thing. We had both Trump and Harris saying, I'm going to either kill the 2017 tax program reform, or I'm going to bring it through. They don't have that. It has to go through Congress. The president doesn't have that power. So to say, well, we're going to do it. I don't think we will continue the tax reform bill, which was passed in December of 2017. And one program that the president has talked about killing is the one that should be kept. That's limiting the deduction for state and local taxes. It's now at $10,000. It should be kept. Nebraskans should not be paying for allowing Illinois and California and New Jersey and New York to overtax and shifting the burden here by letting them deduct it. So that, and I'm distressed about that. He's talked about that, but the point is, we will probably see the tax program, the 2017 plan, which was a good plan in my judgment, we will see it continued into past 2025 when it expires.
Okay. All right.
And that's a good thing. Everybody says, well, it only helped the rich. Not really. I mean, the rich have been benefiting from asset appreciation, not taxes. The rich, supposed rich, pay most of the taxes, income taxes already, you know. So the idea that we tax, that we don't tax them enough, we do.
Okay. During the campaign, Trump said he would have a role in the Federal Reserve's decisions on interest rates and the economy. Is that possible? And how could that affect the economy?
It probably is possible, but we don't want it. I mean, we want to keep monetary policy isolated from politics. I mean, right now the president has threatened Jay Powell a few times, and Jay Powell's term expires in May of 2026. Let him stay there. We don't want the federal government to keep, you could imagine one president keeping interest rates too darn low, creating a fire meaning inflation, and leaving it for the next president. We don't want that. We want the Fed to be independent, and that should stand. It has to be. We don't want to be Venezuela, where that was not the case. We need to see those separate.
Okay. Congress.
Oh boy.
Yeah, this is kind of a biggie. Do you think Congress is going to get behind? I mean, when I say this, it's a loaded question, but we do have to count on them. So do you think they are going to get behind Trump's plans for the economy?
The answer is probably no. I mean, we talk about the Democrats, the Republicans are now in the majority in the House and the Senate, and I'm like, you didn't see not much. I mean, Gates wanted to oust Johnson, and there are a lot of folks, a lot of the congressional representatives want to oust the speaker. No, get behind the speaker, try to pass the plan without a lot of chicanery and adding on. For example, the Farm Bill is now there. The Farm Bill has SNAP in there, and it has the Farm Bill. They put them together to get it passed. Enough of that shenanigans. If you want the SNAP, pull it, pass it. Farm Bill, pass it. Don't put them together to get approval, you know.
Okay. All right. First 100 days in office, what needs to happen in order for the economy to improve in a way that we would like to see it go?
I think stability is the number one thing. In other words, I really, hyperbole bothers me, but in fact, that I am an economist. We may deal in too much hyperbole, but we're number one. This is the best economy ever. How about saying it's the second best? I mean, when somebody says, "Well, where are you in Nebraska?" "Well, I'm the second best economist." Well, who's first? I don't know. I'm not going to claim it. Don't claim to be number one. But stability. So I think taking a step back and not implementing these tariffs right away and being more selective and getting more input from economists, not from the political side.
Okay.
And that needed, and also get a plan for passing the tax reform bill of 2017. That needs to be done. How about this one? Vivek and Elon want to bring the size of government down. How about requiring that everybody, all those federal workers, come back to the office? Because a lot of them have threatened, if you do that, I'm quitting. Okay. I mean, I was there. I mean, when I was there, I had to work, I had to be there every day in the office.
Okay. This program is the Economic Outlook for 2025. Pull out your crystal ball, Ernie. Talk to us, and we only have about 3 minutes left, but kind of take a look in your crystal ball and tell us what to expect in 2025.
Well, if the tariffs are implemented fully as the president says he's going to, it won't be good. We're already probably looking at a recession. If we're not already in one, we're looking at one in 2025, first half. And we're going to talk about the federal debt growing to unacceptable levels. It's now $37 trillion, which is an unacceptable level, but it's going to become more unacceptably high. So we need that addressed, but the debt and deficit are going to grow too much. and we're going to have an examination of who's going to pay for this. It has to be, and it has to include Social Security recipients. I'm sorry for those in your audience that say, well, hey, you can't do that to old folks. What about the young folks? What about to the poor? What about to the rich? I mean, we all have to share in this burden that I'm a baby boomer. We've created probably this problem, and we are on the wealthy side collectively. We need to figure out some way of bringing up those individuals behind us in that train, and particularly the caboose that needs to be done. And I don't see much discussion of that.
All right, so Nebraskans, based on what you've just said, what is their best line of defense then in 2025 to make sure that we can all stay kind of above this?
Well, we all live here in the best part of the best nation on the face of the earth. Put that out. What does that mean? Agriculture is very productive. It's going through a troubled time right now. It will gain, it will move out of it. That's going to be good. Manufacturing in Nebraska is very productive. Likewise, it will do well. Nebraska has some very good parameters and factors that make Nebraska a place to be. And again, I think we need to be receptive to people from all nations legally. We need to be, whether it's a physician from India or an engineer from Sweden, that we need to be. And I see people turning off when the person has an accent. They turn off. Well, no, these people, these individuals. Now again, if they're not engaged in the workforce, that can be a problem.
Talking about the economic outlook for 2025 with Ernie Goss from Creighton University. Thank you so much for being here. People who want more information, we're going to put up a graphic. You can reach Ernie directly, creighton.edu. His number is 402-280-4757. Thank you again for being here to share your time and expertise. We may be calling you back. Who knows?
Oh, Kathy, I mean, thank you.
You bet.
Sorry for the long-winded answers.
No worries. No worries.
To your good questions.
Thanks to our students who are working so hard behind the scenes.
Thanks.
And of course to all of you for watching. We'll see you next week.
Consider This is an issues and information program produced by UNO Television in the School of Communication. More information and program archives can be found at nebraskapublicmedia.org/considerthis. If you'd like to share your comments about this program, call the UNO School of Communication at 402-554-2600 during regular business hours. Or send an email to cwyatt@unomaha.edu.